guys, so I'm going to ask you guys for some trigonometric ratios. Ratio is the fancy word for fraction. Now, each triangle has 6 trigonometric ratios. So for my examples here, I'm going to work all 6. For your homework, I might ask you for some specific one. So just give me one of them or just specific 3 of them. So I might ask you for a few of them, or I might ask you for all 6. So, but let me go over all 3 of them. Now we have an acronym that we use back in geometry. We use an acronym called SOHCAHTOA. This might ring a bell. SOHCAHTOA. Now our sign, what this thing meant was sine. Sometimes we call it theta. In this case, there's an X or a question mark. We have sine, cosine, or tangent. Remember those 3. You guys saw this in geometry. Now, sine was opposite over hypotenuse. That's what SO stands for. Sine is opposite over hypotenuse. Cosine was adjacent over hypotenuse. And tangent was opposite over adjacent. Right? So SOHCAHTOA helped us out. Those are the 3 main ratios. But we have 3 others, which we're going to call cosecant, cosecant of theta, secant of theta, and cotangent of theta. Now, cosecant is the reciprocal of sine. Remember the reciprocal when we flip the fraction? Cosecant is the reciprocal of sine. So cosecant is going to be hypotenuse over opposite. Secant, if you look at the letters S-E-C, it looks like C-O-S backwards. Yes, secant is going to be the reciprocal of cosine. Cosine was adjacent over hypotenuse, so secant is going to be hypotenuse over adjacent. And cotangent is going to be the reciprocal of tangent. Tangent was opposite over adjacent, so cotangent is going to be adjacent over opposite. Now the sides, based on the angle marked, so based on this angle, sometimes I might put a theta there, I might just put a question mark, or I just might mark the angle. So based on that angle, I know the big side is hypotenuse. The big side is hypotenuse. Based on that angle, I'm going to label the other side as opposite or adjacent. Opposite means far away, and adjacent means close to. From those 2 measurements, 45 is opposite, is far away from the angle, and 60 is the adjacent. So if I was answering my 6 trigonometric ratios from this triangle, my sine, my cosine, and my tangent, or my cosecant, secant, and cotangent. So I want to answer all 6. Based on my measurement here, sine on this triangle will be 45 over 75. I'll just leave it as 45 over 75. We could simplify the fraction, right? In my case, goes to 3 over 5 because I divided each by 15. If it says simplify, simplify. EDIA, your homework on EDIA will actually recognize it not simplify. Now, again, if it says simplify, you will have to simplify. So 45 over 75 or 3 over 5, it's the same thing, right? It's just that one of them is simplified. Now my cosine I know is adjacent over hypotenuse, so 60 over 75. If it does ask me to simplify, I will simplify this as 4 over 5. Again, I divided each by 15. My tangent is opposite over adjacent, so 45 over 60. If I have to simplify, I get 3 over 4. My cosecant, it's hypotenuse over opposite, So 75 over 45. If I have to simplify, I call this 5 over 3. My secant is hypotenuse over adjacent, so 75 over 60, or 5 over 4. And my cotangent is adjacent over opposite, so 60 over 45, or 4 over 3. So I gave you guys both answers, simplified and non-simplified. Let's take a look at question number 5 here. Let me label my sides. I know the big side is always the hypotenuse, so 68 will be the hypotenuse. Based on this angle, 60 is the opposite because it's far away, and 32 is the adjacent. If I want to know my sine, I know sine is opposite over hypotenuse, so 60 over 68. This case around, I'm not going to simplify because I don't want to confuse you. You can always simplify fractions, right? But I'm going to give you the non-simplified version. I don't want to confuse you. So sine is opposite over hypotenuse, so 60 over 68. Cosine, I know cosine is adjacent over hypotenuse, so 32 over 68. Again, I'm not going to simplify, but you know how to simplify. Now tangent, if I was looking for tangent, I know tangent is opposite over adjacent, so 60 over 32. If I'm looking for cosecant, I know cosecant is hypotenuse over opposite, so 68 over 60. If I'm looking for secant of theta, or secant of my angle, I know secant is hypotenuse over adjacent, so 68 over 32. And lastly, cotangent. I know cotangent is adjacent over opposite, so 32 over 60. Okay.